Slide that coaster over here. Yeah, right there. And pour me a drink, too. Something strong. Neat.
Coming right up. Settle down. The glass is right here for you.
So 2,000 years ago, the most powerful man on Earth was, well, he was paraded across China in a sealed carriage, but this carriage was just packed to the roof with rotting fish.
Just baking in the summer heat.
Exactly. Hundreds of pounds of dead, stinking fish baking in the sun. And all of it was to hide the simple fact that the man inside the carriage was already a corpse.
It's a hell of an image.
Right. So pull up a stool, settle in.
Yeah.
Tonight we are taking a deep dive into what I can really only describe as the absolute ultimate biological and technological system failure in human history.
The rise and the spectacular collapse of the Qin dynasty.
Yeah. And I know what you're thinking. People hear ancient history and they picture, dusty scrolls and quiet monks giving boring speeches.
Slow transitions, a lot of staring at rivers.
Right, guys in silk robes talking about philosophy, but that is not tonight. Forget the textbooks you slept through in high school.
Because what we're looking at is a machine moving so incredibly fast and demanding such absolute perfection that it literally tore its own gears to shreds.
Yeah, tore them to pieces.
Yeah.
I want you to picture the ancient world, specifically the Warring States period. So we're talking roughly 475 to 221 BC.
Wasn't a civilized debate.
No, it was a massive, brutal, blood-soaked, biological battle royale. Just pure, unadulterated survival of the fittest.
A cage match that lasted 5 centuries.
500 years, 7 massive states just tearing chunks out of each other. And at the end of it, out of the mud and the blood, crawls the ultimate apex predator.
The state of Qin.
The Great Qin.
It's really just basic ecology when you look at it. I mean, in any enclosed ecosystem, 5 centuries of constant existential pressure forces adaptation.
You have to adapt or die.
Exactly. You either evolve armor and teeth or, well, you become protein for the guy next to you.
And man, the Qin state decided you really liked the taste of protein.
They certainly did.
They spent those 500 years becoming this highly efficient, perfectly tuned organism, right? Designed for one single purpose.
Devouring everything else in the ecosystem.
Yeah. But here's the thing, and this is what people get wrong. They didn't just win by having bigger swords. That's the amateur take.
It's much deeper than military tech.
Right. They won by fundamentally altering their own genetic code as a society. While the other states were, arguing over poetry and royal lineage, the Qin instituted this ruthless, cold-blooded meritocracy.
You're talking about the reforms of Sheng Yang.
Oh, Sheng Yang.
He was a minister who realized early on that aristocratic privilege is, well, it's an inefficiency.
It's dead weight. Sheng Yang basically stood up and told the Qin population, look, I don't care who your father is. I don't care about your bloodline.
I care how many heads you can chop off in battle.
Literally, you want a promotion. Bring me the severed head of an enemy soldier.
You want land. Bring me more heads.
They turned their entire society into a biological wood chipper. It just bred out all the weakness, the soft nobles were pushed out, and the ruthless, pragmatic killers rose to the top.
It was a brutal evolution, sure, but it created a society entirely optimized for expansion.
So by the time King Zhang, the guy who would later call himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, by the time he takes the throne, he's sitting at the controls of a perfectly evolved predator.
And devour the map it did.
Oh, it ate everything. By 221 BC, this beast had eaten all 6 of the other major states. It won the battle royale. It was the undisputed king of the forest.
The ultimate victor.
Now think about this from a normal human perspective. If it were you or me sitting on that throne, we'd probably kick back, right? Put our feet up, hand out some medals, pour a drink like the one you've got there.
Enjoy the spoils of a 500-year war.
Exactly. Take a breath. But Qin Shi Huang doesn't do that. He stands up, he looks around his newly conquered ecosystem, and he is just deeply physically disgusted by it.
Well, he was looking at thousands of years of regional diversity. 7 different cultures suddenly mashed into one border.
Right. He looks out and sees crooked trees. He sees weird grass. He hears people speaking with different accents.
Using different coins?
Yeah, different money. He looks in the dirt roads and sees carts rolling down them with varying axle widths, and it's tearing up his highways.
Yeah.
And it just drives him absolutely crazy.
So he doesn't just rule it.
No, he tries to override it.
Yeah.
I always think of it like, imagine a maniacal new IT director gets hired at a massive global corporation.
One of those guys who hates legacy systems.
Oh, hates them.
Yeah.
He inherits this vast, diverse network of computers. Some are running Mac, some are running Linux, some have, custom software the local offices have used for decades just to get their jobs done.
Messy but functional.
Right. Does he try to gently integrate them? No. Driven by pure clinical obsessive-compulsive disorder, he deploys the Great Kin bulldozer.
He aggressively wipes and reformats every single hard drive on the continent.
Exactly. To his exact proprietary operating system. Just because he hates how the old desktop folders look.
It's a forceful reformatting of reality itself. I mean, he standardized the writing system, the weights, the measure.
Everything had to be identical.
He even melted down all the weapons from the conquered states and cast them into 12 giant bronze statues in his capital.
Just to make sure nobody could unplug his new system.
Exactly.
But I have to push back here for a second. Look, the guy just united a continent that had been slaughtering itself for 5 centuries. Standardizing the currency and the roads. I mean, isn't that just good management?
On paper, maybe.
Yeah, like, why does history treat him like a monster just for making sure the trains run on time, so to speak?
Because of the underlying philosophy enforcing it, it was called legalism.
Ah, legalism.
And legalism operates on the core assumption that human beings are inherently selfish, stupid, and untrustworthy.
A very grim view of humanity.
Very. Therefore, order can only be maintained through harsh, inescapable law.
Law that usually comes with a heavy dose of dismemberment.
Yes. Mutilation, execution, you name it. The problem is, ecosystems, by their biological nature, thrive on diversity.
Right.
A forest survives a blight because the trees are slightly different. A network survives a shock because it has localized adaptations.
It's flexible.
Exactly. When you try to force absolute rigid uniformity across a massive scale using terror, you are working against the fundamental laws of nature. You are replacing organic, messy resilience with synthetic brittleness.
Synthetic brittleness. Man, write that down in your napkin. That's a good phrase.
It's what happens when a system can't bend. It just breaks.
So he formats the hard drives of millions of people. But once you do that, once you've forced everyone onto your single operating system, what's the next step for our paranoid IT director?
He realizes his new system is exposed.
Right. He has to lock down the firewall.
You prevent unauthorized rollbacks, you block third-party installations, and most importantly, you silence the feedback loop.
Enter the extreme firewall upgrade of 213 BC. The emperor and his prime minister, this guy Li Si, demand that only one single voice is allowed to exist within this ecosystem.
The emperor's voice.
Only his. If a scholar points to a history book and says, hey, maybe we should try doing things the way the old kings did, that's no longer just a difference of opinion.
In an IT sense, that is malicious code.
Malicious code.
And in a perfectly rigid formatted machine, the slightest deviation isn't just an annoyance, it's a mortal threat to the core architecture.
Yeah, because if one person can successfully point out a flaw,
the illusion of absolute perfection shatters.
So they didn't just delete the comments, they deleted the users.
The infamous burning of the books and burying of the scholars.
Any text that wasn't about agriculture, medicine, or divination was just tossed into the bonfire, gone. And when a few hundred scholars complained about it in the capital, the emperor had them buried alive.
Just shoved into the dirt to suffocate.
It is serious, dark nonsense. But here is the mechanism that really gets under my skin. It wasn't just the emperor doing this from the top down.
No, they weaponized the population against itself.
Using the mutual responsibility system, the Bayuya system.
It's like a biological immune system turned entirely inward.
Think about this.
Yeah.
You're a peasant, okay? The government groups you into a pod of 5 or 10 families.
Your fate is tied to theirs.
Completely. If the guy living next door to you reads an illegal poem, or, I don't know, steals a chicken, and you don't report it to the authorities immediately.
The state doesn't just execute the thief.
No, they execute you. They execute your entire pod. They will literally chop you in half at the waist in the public square.
So what happens to the social fabric?
It's gone. You become a node in the emperor's firewall. You watch your neighbor like a hawk. Trust is entirely eradicated.
You can't trust anyone.
They hard-coded the entire empire so it could only output one string of text. Everything is awesome, and the emperor is a genius.
Which works, on the surface. You achieve total silence, total compliance.
But there is a massive evolutionary trade-off, right?
Massive. By building a firewall so thick that no information can get in or out without being sanitized, the system becomes entirely blind.
It isolates itself.
Exactly, and it becomes utterly, terrifyingly dependent on the one guy running the server.
Qin Shi Huang.
Precisely. A locked-down system with zero tolerance for localized decision-making requires an immense, continuous supply of energy just to maintain that unnatural state of uniformity.
All of that processing power was bottlenecked through a single man.
The core processor.
He was the only one legally allowed to compute. History says he was reading 120 pounds of bamboo scrolls every single day.
That's a ridiculous amount of data.
Micromanaging an entire formatted continent, approving everything from troop movements to local grain distributions in a village 1,000 miles away. I mean, it's a staggering bottleneck.
It's completely unsustainable. No organic system can survive that.
It's madness. Imagine building an invincible, planet-destroying Death Star. It's massive, it's terrifying, it's got lasers that can vaporize anything.
Yeah, the ultimate weapon.
Right, but for some completely insane, paranoid reason, you wire the entire trillion-dollar machine to run on a single, aging, leaking AA battery.
Because you don't trust any other power source.
Exactly. You're so paranoid, you won't plug it into the wall.
And as long as the battery has a charge, the machine is terrifying.
Sure, but the second that battery dies, the invincible machine becomes floating space junk. And that brings us back to the rotting fish.
210 BC.
210 BC. The emperor is out on a grand tour of his eastern provinces. He's inspecting his perfectly formatted ecosystem, and he just drops dead.
The AA battery shorts out.
Just like that.
He was only 50 years old, too. Likely poisoned by the very mercury pills his alchemists were feeding him to make him immortal.
You can't make this up. The irony is thicker than the smog outside. So the core processor is dead. Now, if this were a normal, healthy society, there would be a protocol.
A line of succession.
The crown prince steps up, the ministers facilitate the transition, life goes on. But remember the architecture of the firewall.
The system punished initiative with death.
Exactly. So the guys traveling with him, Prime Minister Li Si and the chief eunuch Zhao Gao, they look at the dead emperor and they absolutely panic.
They are terrified of the machine they helped build.
They know that if the emperor's capable eldest son, Fusu, takes the throne, their power is gone. And in the Qin system, losing power usually means losing your head.
So they didn't reboot the system.
No.
They hacked it.
They hid his death, they kept his body in the sealed carriage, pulled the shades down, and literally had meals delivered to the corpse.
And to cover up the smell of the emperor rotting in the summer heat.
Zhao Gao ordered carts of dead abalone fish to be towed in front of and behind the royal carriage. It's the biological equivalent of a headless organism continuing to twitch because the nerve endings haven't realized the brain is gone.
Just coasting on momentum.
While the fish were rotting, Li Si and Zhao Gao were forging letters in the dead emperor's name. They ordered the capable eldest son to commit suicide.
Which he did because the system demanded absolute obedience.
Right. And they put the youngest, most easily manipulated son on the throne, the second emperor.
That was the fatal malware injection.
Oh, 100%.
They installed a weak processor to run an operating system that required a supercomputer.
And the great Qin bulldozer just stalled out in the mud. I mean, from 210 BC to 208 BC, we watch a rapid, catastrophic internal breakdown.
Because think about the middle managers left behind.
The eunuchs, the provincial governors.
They don't know how to write new code. They've spent a decade surviving by just nodding their heads and repeating the company line.
Yeah, when things start breaking, all they know how to do is lie to the system to protect themselves.
There's a famous story about Zhao Gao, the eunuch who orchestrated this whole hack. Once he had the puppet emperor on the throne, he wanted to test the loyalty of the court.
A loyalty test in the Qin court sounds terrifying.
It was. So he brought a deer into the throne room and presented it to the young emperor, calling it a horse. Yes. The emperor laughed and said, "Surely you are mistaken. That is a deer." But Zhao Gao turned to the officials in the room and asked them what it was.
Oh, man. Let me guess. Anyone who called it a deer ended up dead.
Exactly. The ones who remained silent or agreed it was a horse, they lived. He literally forced the system to accept a false reality to prove its subservience.
That's insane.
But here's the flaw. When you purge truth from a network, the network cannot respond to real-world threats.
Because you can't fake it forever. Reality always cashes the check eventually. The firewall was down. And once the firewall drops, natural selection comes rushing back in.
209 BC.
Just a year after the first emperor dies, the cracks split wide open. And it starts, of all things, with a rainstorm.
The rebellion of Chen Sheng and Wu Guang.
Right. These are two low-level officers, right? Tasked with marching a group of conscripts to a garrison. But it rains. The roads are washed out. They're going to be late.
A logistical hiccup.
Yeah. In a normal society, that you send a messenger saying, "Hey, bad weather, be there on Tuesday." But what was the penalty for being late under the flawless kin legalist code?
Death.
Death. No excuses, no context. The system demanded perfection. So these two guys are sitting in the mud doing the math.
We are late. We will be executed.
Right. So what is the penalty for open rebellion against the emperor?
Also death.
Well, they say, if we're dead either way, we might as well rebel.
It's perfect logic.
The sheer inflexible brutality of the system literally incentivized its own destruction. The moment they raised a flag, the entire continent exploded.
The pressure had to go somewhere.
The peasants, the former nobles, everyone pushed to the absolute brink by the system's relentless demands.
Yeah.
They all rose up. By 207 BC, the invincible Qin dynasty, just 15 years after conquering the entire known world.
That instantly devolved into an old, blind dinosaur tearing its own flesh off.
And the external environment hadn't been static either.
No, new species had evolved in the shadows. The Han Dynasty was already forming in the chaos, just waiting to take over.
And this brings us to the ultimate cynical punchline of the whole tragedy. I'm sitting here looking at the bottom of my glass and I'm realizing the sick joke of it all.
What's that?
The very thing that made them the undisputed champion of the Battle Royale. Their absolute suffocating control, their extreme firewall, their perfect formatting.
Right.
That was the exact same mechanism that guaranteed they couldn't be saved when the crash happened.
Because they eradicated all the debuggers.
Yes.
In a healthy system, when a crisis hits, you rely on the diverse perspectives of your population to troubleshoot. You adapt, you try new things.
But the Qin had made troubleshooting a capital offense.
They executed all their mechanics. They built a machine that could only move forward at maximum speed with no steering wheel and no brakes.
A 500-year evolution wiped out in 15 years. It's the brightest meteor in ancient history.
It burned out fast.
It lit up the darkness, no doubt about it. It built the foundation of a unified China that echoes today. But it moved so aggressively fast, demanded so much velocity, that it caught fire from its own friction.
It burned entirely to ashes before it even hit the ground.
From apex predator to fossil fuel in the blink of an eye.
Well, when a regime plays the game of ruling so aggressively that it turns into destruction, extinction is the only biological outcome left.
It really is.
It's a perfect case study in the fatal cost of hypercentralization.
So, as we wipe down the bar here and close out this deep dive, let's summarize the tap.
Go ahead.
We looked at the Great Qin Bulldozer, a perfectly evolved predator that won a 5-century cage match. It successfully formatted the entire world to its obsessive specifications.
Upgraded its firewall to block out all human feedback.
Turned neighbors into executioners.
Oh.
And then promptly crashed its own operating system because it was running on a single fragile battery that died and got paraded around with dead fish.
I'll clear these glasses for you. But before you head out into the night, I want to leave you with a question to chew on.
Oh, here we go.
We've been talking about ancient emperors, bamboo scrolls, and chariots. But the mechanics of systems haven't changed in 2,000 years.
True.
Look at the modern world around you right now. Look at the mega corporations swallowing up competition to create monopolies.
Yeah.
Look at the algorithms dictating our feeds, trying to format human behavior into predictable, uniform data points.
Formatting the hard drives.
Exactly. Look at political movements demanding absolute ideological purity, treating any internal disagreement as malicious code.
Calling a deer a horse.
Aren't there systems today moving so incredibly fast and demanding such absolute, unforgiving uniformity that they are actively destroying their own debuggers before the inevitable crash?
Man, that is a chilling thought to take out into the dark. Pass him his coat, will you?
There you go.
Thanks for sitting at the bar with us for this deep dive. Watch your step on the way out. And keep an eye out for those bulldozers.